Hello, it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is our first 100 dies, so I challenged the team to make a card using dies within our first 100. And then as a secondary, just for me challenge, I wanted to try my hand at a card using some simple solid colors. So put away my pattern paper this month and I tried it just with solids. I used 3 dies on this project and I tried to space them out within the 100. So I've got die number 2, 46, and 90. I'm going to be altering the assembly of the Circle Charm pop-up, which you would typically use in an A2 size card, so that I can have additional circles for a long chain of floating butterflies. I started with a piece of cardstock 12 inches long by 4.5 inches tall and scored in the middle for folding. So that's going to give me a landscape 6-inch by 4.5 inch card. So turning to my Circle Charm pop-up, the die in the set that is used to cut the pivoting circle has a little chunk of die material out on the side, and that's typically used to line up with the fold of the card, but I'm doing an alternate assembly. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure 1/4 of an inch from the end and give myself just a little line with a permanent pen. Now don't worry about that pen mark, it'll get worn off when it goes through the machine. So for this assembly, instead of lining up with the fold of the card, I'm going to be lining up at the outside edge, and it's going to be that pen mark that should be along the edge of the card. And now that can go anywhere along the card, I've decided to skew it upward a little bit so that I have room for some fun borders along the bottom. Okay, so if I were to cut this now, I would have a solid pivoting circle, but I would like my pivoting circle to be a ring. So I need to nest in the next size down circle die and cut it at the same time. So my favorite temporary removable tape is from Scotch. It comes in the blue box, the Scotch removable tape. Just holding that in place so that nothing moves, and then I open up my card so that I can die cut it. You can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die. Today I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. So just making sure that that card is open so that I am only cutting through the front of the card with the die. Then I just roll that through my machine. Cardstock weight isn't super important with the Circle Charm pop-up, but since I was using just a single layer of cardstock for my card, in other words, I wasn't going to be layering on any pattern paper, I went ahead and used a heavyweight white. So that's 100-pound white cardstock. Now I'm going to cut the rings, and for that I'm going to use a lightweight white cardstock. So I switched to the 65-pound. So this is the die I'm using. It cuts the ring with the tabs attached. And the reason I've chosen a lightweight cardstock for this is because I am going to be doubling those rings, because I'm going to end up cutting them again out of the bright colors, and they will be, sandwiched together with the fishing line in between them. So for the first layer, which is the base, I went ahead and just used a lightweight cardstock. That way it keeps the bulk down in my card. And I need a total of 4 of these. Okay, I have my 4 rings and they have the tabs attached. So on each one of these, I'm just going to work the fold next to the tab, and I'm going to fold those to the back, give them a good pinch, and then bring them back out again. And then I just repeat that process for my other 3 rings. All right, now I'm going to start chaining these together, and I'm going to do that by attaching tabs together as a kiss connection. So I put the adhesive on one of the tabs on the top, then I'm going to flip the next ring over so that it's face down, and then I'm able to line up the tabs on both sides so that I get a nice straight chain of rings. So that's why I like to do this as a kiss connection instead of, say, just cutting one of the tabs off and gluing the other one behind the other one, which that could be done. I just think that this way really ensures that I get a straight line of rings. So then I'll just use a little clip to hold those together and move on to the next one. So again, I'm just doing kiss connections, which means that the second one goes face down over the top of the first one, and you kiss those 2 tabs together and use the adhesive to hold them together. And like I said, it's really easy to line these up because you've got the tabs on the other side as well, just to make sure that you have a nice straight line. Then I can just move my clip and carry on to the final one. So same exact process, adhesive in the tab. The final ring goes face down. I line up those 2 tabs. making sure everything's lined up. So my favorite adhesive is LINECO Neutral pH Adhesive. I have that in my fine tip bottle. We sell both of those items on our website. All right, so here's my chain of 4 rings that is ready now to attach inside the card. Now before I attach my ring chain, I want to work the pivot points of the circle that's attached to the card. So I just go ahead and spin that circle around and give those pivot points a good pinch. I suggest doing that in both directions so that you have nice loose pivot points and that circle can easily pivot around. And then just make sure that you've returned the circle back to its starting position. Now I want to take my first ring of my ring chain and I want to lay it over the top of that circle. And I'm just looking to make sure that everything is lined up properly on the ring, but then also that the chain of rings looks straight. And then once I'm sure that I have that nice and straight, then what I can do is add a little adhesive to that tab and then just wrap it over the edge of the pivoting circle and glue it to the other side. Okay? Since I'm going to be adding a decorative ring over the top, it doesn't matter that that tab is visible. Okay, so now I'm going to accordion fold all of the rings down so that I find that flat position. So in the flat position of this card, all of the rings will be stacked up on top of each other. You just accordion fold them down to get into that position. And there's a little wiggle in it, so you can take a little time to kind of make sure that it's straight and that the circles are lined up over the top of each other, and then fold that final left-hand tab, the single tab, in and add adhesive on top. Okay, so see, I folded the tab down, added the adhesive on top, and then now in the flat position, so it's going to be easier to do that against the table, I'm just going to keep my card nice and flat and fold the other side against that exposed adhesive. So that's going to pick up that final ring in the exact right position to make the chain expand when the card opens. Okay, so just giving that a second to set up, and then when I open it, the chain of circles will expand. Okay, now because I did a kiss connection, 2 of the tabs, the ones that are essentially in the valley fold, so here and here, are visible when the card is closed, and I don't like that. So what I want to do is I want to fold that set of tabs to one side or the other and glue them down. So I decided just to fold them to the right and glue them down. So back here behind the piece, I just need to go in there with a little bit of glue, fold that tab set to one side or the other, it really honestly doesn't matter, and just glue it down. And I really only have to do that with the 2 outside ones, the ones that are in the valley folds. The one in the middle, that's a mountain fold, so you don't see it anyway. Okay, so now I need to remake my accordion. So valley fold there, mountain, valley, so that it all collapses down into that stacked position again. And now because I've glued those tabs down, I've removed them from view. So you don't see them anymore through the opening because they're glued down behind the circles. And of course, with these designer challenge videos, I love to point out when I've got to a very generic section of the card, and this one is it. So you could definitely decorate that any way that you see fit, in any colors, any theme. The Circle Charm pop-up includes a great 2-piece butterfly. So for this technique, I've chosen 5 colors, and I'm going to need 2 of the butterflies and then 2 black butterfly bodies for each one. For each of the 5 colors, I'm also going to die cut one of those tabbed rings, and this time I'm going to take advantage of the stencil feature that's built into the die, and I'm going to use a white colored pencil to add stitch lines to each of the rings. So once I have 5 rings and all of my butterflies, I'm going to figure out what color combination I want in each section. So just mixing up between the butterfly colors and the rings. And then I'm going to start attaching those to the pop-up. So let me show you how that's done. Okay, step 1, with the big butterflies, I'm not going to need the head and antenna because I'm going to use those out of the separate butterfly body. So I'll just take my scissors and remove those. I could have left them, but it's just more to line up, so it's better just to remove them. Then what I want to do is take something like a small glue dot. That's my favorite. You could do this with glue, but with the fishing line, it'll stick better to a dry adhesive. So if you've got a really thin tape or something like a miniature glue dot, just go ahead and add that in the body area of one of the butterflies. And I just kind of stretched it so it was in that center section and kind of, I don't know, covered more of it. And then I'm just going to use some clear fishing line. So you could also use a clear thread, just whatever you have to be able to dangle the butterflies. You don't need much, but I'm going to put enough that I can, change the height of the butterfly. So a couple inches, a few inches of fishing line sticking up above the butterfly. So that's stuck down into the glue dot now. Then I'm going to add some additional glue in that section and then line up the other butterfly right over the top. So it's only getting glued together in that center section, and it's going to sandwich the fishing line between the two butterflies. Then I can add some additional glue on top of the stack and add one of the butterfly bodies. Once I have the body on the front, then I flip the piece over, add some glue on the back, and then glue another body to the back. And that way, if the butterfly spins around in the card, it will look good on both sides. And I just want to make sure that the fishing line is coming up in between the two antennae. Okay, now what I want to do is hold the body tightly while I bring the front wing forward and the back wing backward. So I'm going to do that on both sides. So just making sure that I'm holding the body, then I just fold the front wing forward, the back wing backward, and then that will give that butterfly some dimension. Okay, this is ready now to install inside the card. Once again, I like a dry adhesive for the fishing line, so I'm going to go back to those miniature glue dots. So the glue dot goes at the top of the ring, and then I can get the fishing line down into that glue dot while I'm, centering my butterfly to my liking. Now, I found that my glue dot was being a little finicky and it wasn't actually grabbing the fishing line. So I took the edge of my paper piercer and just folded a little bit of the glue dot over the top of the fishing line to hold it on there. And then I can kind of check, make sure that I think that it's dangling nicely in the center of the ring. Once I make sure that I like it, then I can add my other ring over the top. Now over here, when I cut this tab off, I'm going to take just a little bit extra, so a little bit of the ring off on that side, and that's because it's ending up down in a valley fold. So any of the locations where the ring ends up in a valley fold, I trim just a little bit extra off of the tab when I am trimming it. And that way it won't shift. So when it's down in that valley fold and you close the card, if you haven't trimmed a little bit extra off, then the motion of the card will probably shift the ring over a little bit. So by just taking a little bit extra off, you can avoid that happening. Okay, so now any adjustments I would want to do, I've got extra fishing line hanging up above the ring, so if I wanted to, I could hold the ring and pull to raise that butterfly up a little bit. I could kind of expand the wings. I can just mess with it until I like the location. And then now I'm going to carry on and do my final two rings in the exact same way. Okay, I completed all of the butterflies. I can give that a check, make sure that it's folding down nicely. I like that all the butterflies end up in a giant stack. They'll get a little squished down when it goes in the envelope, but it's really kind of fun the way they all stack on top of each other. All right, I like the location of all my butterflies, so now I can go in with my scissors and trim off any excess fishing line. There is also a large ring in the die set that will fit around the circle opening on the front and inside of the card. And I'm using that stencil feature again with my white colored pencil to add the stitch lines. So that ring will just kind of add a decorative frame around the opening on the front of the card, and it will also fit on the inside of the card. Now the time that I should have added that was before I attached my ring set, but if you forget like I did, it's no big deal. Just snip the ring somewhere, then you can weave it around and then glue it in place and just put the seam somewhere where it's not very visible. And if you can think ahead of, what color you might want that decorative piece to be if you plan to use it, then definitely add it at that one of those beginning steps, before you add the ring set. But it's really not a problem to glue it on afterwards with just a single little snip. Okay, switching to my second die set, I'm going to be using one of the borders out of our Border Blends Argyle set. And what I did is I cut that border out of all 5 of my card colors multiple times so that I can make these rainbow border strips. Once I have the 5 colors all squished next to each other, then I flip the piece over and add some double-sided adhesive tape along the back to hold them all in that position so that they don't move. Okay, one thing about those border sets is that they are 5.5 inches long, but I have a 6-inch wide card. So what I'm going to do is cut the border so that I can insert a heart. So the way I'm going to do that is take the heart die, and I'm going to use some temporary tape to hold that over my border strip in the location where I would like it to go eventually on the card. And then when I run that through my die cutting machine, I only want to cut that left side of the heart. Now the way I do that is I stop the cutting pad short. So essentially I set the cutting pad so that it is only covering that left edge of the die, and then I roll that through. Okay, then I move the die so that I can cut the right edge, and I basically want to cut that right edge as close to the end of the border as I can get it, because I'm trying to make that border seem longer than it was. So I want to, remove only the smallest amount of border that I need to get this effect. All right, so now what I have is a piece of border that has the right side of the heart on the edge. And then I have that other piece that has the left side. Okay, so now when I lay those pieces out on the front of the card, I start with that piece of border, then my heart, leaving a little bit of white showing, and then my right side, and then now my border will extend to the end. And I have that tape already on the back of the border strip, so they're very easy to attach to the card. In this case, I actually have a little bit of extra border hanging off the edge, so I'll just trim that off with scissors. Inside the card, I did that same trick with the heart and the borders along the bottom, and then on the right-hand side, I did that same trick, but this time with a scalloped circle out of the set so that I'd have a place to sign the card. And then at the top, I decided on a single border, but I didn't know which color to use, so instead I just mixed all the colors. So just gluing little chunks of the borders together to make a rainbow-colored single border. I added that same rainbow single border at the top of the front of the card and then finished out with the word hello out of our word set 1 greetings. My finished card measures 4.5 by 6, so that will fit nicely in an A7 envelope for mailing. I ended up really liking how this turned out with that simple, stark white card with those bright colors. But absolutely take this technique and run with it. What other colors could you use? You could add pattern paper, you could add glitter. Maybe some of those rings you want to add a solid circle over the top so that you have an area for a greeting. You could dangle other items in the opening. So lots of ways that you could make this card your own. If you check the description box below this YouTube video, you will find supply links as well as a link to the blog post. And on the blog post is where you will find photographs of my card, as well as links to all of the wonderful 100 dies inspiration by our very talented design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.